this kind of sets the mood that the Pilgrims were really bad people. I mean, where it says, behind the English invasion of North America, behind their massacre of the Indians, their deception, their brutality, it uses really descriptive language to convey that they were bad people.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because I mean, I've always thought that the Pilgrims were amazing people that started the U.S., but now this and all its descriptive words are really teaching me that maybe they weren't the best people.
Yeah, I always had this idea that they were just like extremely good people. They came to America, they were innocent people, they just started their own towns and things like that.
How like they annihilated them and how they were brutal to them. And I think that he did well by like talking differently from other authors and like all these words that he's using.
And also, like they said that they depraved them and talking about after the great vanities. So I guess like they must really did really like harm to them, because like they said in the beginning that they killed a lot of them, and they killed like 313. Only 313 Indians lived from the killing, and so that means, and it was a whole bunch of them before, and now it's only 313. They must have been killing them a lot.
So what I want you to do right now is, I want you to turn and talk and discuss, why do you think Mary Ann Hoberman used this throughout her poem? What does the alliteration do for this poem? What is its purpose? Let's turn and talk.
Well, I think because it makes it sound like a soft sound. What about you?
Well, yeah, like sort of like the same thing, only like, well, I like sort of think that like it's sort of like the S sound sort of sounds like pretty and like sort of like gets like prettier and prettier and prettier, and then like sort of like it's getting like sleepier and sleepier and sleepier.
Yeah. It also sounds like a sleepy sound. Also, Miss Cantor told us that. Yeah, in the light, in the library.
Which makes 50. Here and here, which makes 50.
Do you mind?
So they're actually really the same strategy, except they're kind of like doing the strategy in a different shape.
It's like we're doing the strategy in different shapes.
Were you a mathematician who could represent our understanding?
What I did was that you first decompose them.
Yeah.
And like, so you really decompose and then you compose them.
Yeah, because decomposing first and then composing makes it easier. I compose it first.
When I did this one, I did it's kind of the same strategy, except it's a little bit different. You know what? I composed them still using the same thing. Like I was composing them still using the same, because you can see how I first I actually added them together. So and then you kind of decompose them. You first decompose them, then add them.
Yeah, because see, if you compose first, there's a different number that you get to compose together, so it's harder. But if you decompose, you get different numbers that you compose, which makes it easier. But you have to choose what you decompose carefully, otherwise it can make it harder.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good information.
So these were three quite engaging. Yeah. Some of the students were unbelievable in their ability to conduct extended discourse. You want to start?
I just noticed in the Pilgrim conversation, I love how they put their own opinions. They added their own opinions, which to me as a teacher, I feel that they really had understanding of the subject. And they were almost reflecting on it. They were picking out words, and they were it was a really rich conversation between the two girls.
Yeah. I also think that I was struck by that as well, and also how they kind of interwove their opinions with the evidence from the text.
Right.
Yeah. So they use very specific words. They pulled them out of the paragraph. And also when they used the words, I was engaged with the paragraph. It seemed like it was a very rich text with a lot of really rich and descriptive, emotive words, which captured their attention and then our attention.
And contrary to what they knew,
Yeah.
I think that's probably what kind
Exactly.
of one of the things that ignited the conversation. One of the things I noticed with that second group in that program was that one of the kids had trouble finding the language to say what he needed to say, but he had the idea. You could see that he was trying to get something out. So what I wonder is, what was behind their prompt? What were they trying to get out of that conversation?
I was struck with the first two girls in the Pilgrims conversation, how sophisticated the language was.
Yeah.
Like I just wrote down, one girl said they really descriptive language to convey. That's what she said. So using those words to convey, and I was thinking how they were able to incorporate this academic, what we consider academic language, to voice their opinions about this passage. So, like, I wonder what did the teacher did to do that, for these girls to incorporate that into their own expressions, right? So that was very interesting.
Yeah.
What about can we talk about some of the other ones that we saw? What jumped out in the alliteration video?
Well, they knew what the alliteration was, right? That it was the S's. And I wouldn't have thought that they were so little that they would actually consider why it was used. And so they had some good, what did one of those girls say? It was like a song. It made it like a song.
And it got prettier and
made it prettier, right?
Soft, I think. Did they use the word soft in there too?
I think so. And it did seem like they were thinking through while they were talking, and I think the second girl in that it struggled a little bit, but just kept explaining and got to her thought.
Right.
I think that's similar for all three conversations. It was really their thoughts. They were communicating their thoughts, which was impressive. They weren't answering a prompt. There maybe was a prompt, but it was really their thinking. They were thinking a lot, which was great.
Right. They were taking time to try and they were being persistent, and they felt like they had the time to struggle with it.
Yeah.
And they show also this cultural aspect of discourse, right? Like learning to take turns, like they knew, this side of looking at each other when they are speaking, waiting, trying to understand what the other person is saying. Like that is not reflected necessarily in the discourse, but shows that they have an understanding of the norms of the culture in which they are using language. So it's interesting.
And trying to make meaning. They're trying to make meaning of that, of what it really means, and connecting it to the poem. I think together that was, more rather than just thinking about it themselves. So could they have come up with those without having that discourse? That's what is interesting.
So what about those two future mathematicians?
Hilarious. One thing that struck me about this, how this was different than the other two, is that they were, the prompt was for them to write how they solved it. So they had their notes, they had written it down ahead of time, which is different, and it kind of led to some different things. They were explaining to their partner what they had done.
And they were asked to use those words very explicitly.
Compose and
Compose and decompose. But they got it. They definitely knew what that meant. It was very direct and focused. It reminds me more of like the focus part of, like more of a discussion under our definition that we talked about it. It's more a focused topic.
The Common Core math standards has the practice standards contains this piece about understanding the reasoning of others. Do you feel like this is an illustration of that, and how do you think so?
Well, they were listening to each other. So one of them said, that's interesting.
Yeah.
About the other person's thought, so.
And they did it in two different ways. And so one wasn't necessarily, the problem itself was not like, what's the right answer, is how do you get to it?
Right.